All right, friends, I'm so excited for who you get to meet today. I'm sitting here with my new friend, Raquelle Stevens. And Raquelle, I'm so glad to meet you.
I'm so glad to meet you. I've just been reading all about you and listening to what you're doing, and I just am thrilled to be here.
For women who haven't gotten to meet you yet, can you tell us who you are, what you do, and a fun fact about yourself?
Yeah, so I'm an author, producer, and a host. And a fun fact about myself is that I was thinking about it, right? I'm like, what could I say? What's like a fun fact? And the other day, I was driving and I have this thing where if I'm in the zone with my music, whether it's my worship music or I'm just in a flow, I will drive past my house and keep driving because I'm just having such a good time in the car. And I do this all the time. And the other day I had this thought, I was like, this is kind of weird because I looked at the clock and I'm like, now 30 minutes has gone by. Like I literally was driving home from dinner and I'm still continuing to drive because I'm just enjoying my music so much. And I'm like, that's kind of weird. Like I could just put the music on in the house, but I just love the feeling of like driving and blasting my music. So I, I don't even know if it's really a fun fact. It's more like a fun quirk, but I do it all the time.
I love that. Are you a big car singer?
Yes, I am.
Same.
You are? Okay, so me and you need
Yeah.
to go for a drive.
Seriously, like the
Yeah.
carpool karaoke version of Girls Night. I love this. This is
Okay.
producing ideas.
This is a spinoff. This
is amazing. I'm very much in. Okay, so I want to hear, you wrote a book that came out in January and it's called The Sunshine Mind, and it's 100 days to finding hope and finding the hope and joy you want. What inspired you to write this? Like, tell me the backstory behind this book.
Yeah. So my co-author, who was so bummed that she couldn't be here today, she's actually recording her show. She's a morning show with Ryan Seacrest, and she called me, and she had been working on a book about dating, and she talks about it in our book, but the book didn't get picked up, and she was, really discouraged. And then the woman who did the proposal for her, she called her. This was during the pandemic, and she said, I really believe in you. Like, are there any other book ideas that you have? And she said, well, my devotional book has been helping me so much. So many people I know are really struggling right now. I would love to do a devotional book, but I don't really feel qualified to write scripture. And she said, well, is there anyone in your life that you would want to partner with? And she said, my friend Raquelle. So she called me. I immediately was like, I'm all in. Yes. And I had been having, similar conversations with friends, just people feeling really anxious about the future and, you know, just kind of feeling the heaviness of life. And Tanya and I are both believers that we can always find hope and we can always find joy in the midst of hard times. And so that's how the idea came about. And I was so thrilled that Tanya asked me to be a part of it.
I love that. It's so timely that we're talking about this today. We're going to dive into all kinds of things about like feeling like you're falling short in comparison, because I know that that's something that every single one of us feels at different times, and that it can be just like positively crippling. But I'm so grateful for your book, especially today. I feel like and this is going to be true whenever this comes out, but like as we're recording this, it just feels like the world is so heavy.
Yeah.
Oh, it's so heavy. And so I'm grateful for any bits of sunshine and any like arrows towards hope, because we just need them. We just need them.
And you're doing that too with your work. So I'm so grateful, and I meet people, like you too, who are just, out there doing the work and being kind and putting out messages of hope and joy. And I think that's what, what we can do is what is in, our control. And so that's, I totally agree with what you're saying.
Mm. I want to hear a little bit more about your work.
Yeah.
Because I know that are you in LA now?
I am. I've been in LA for 13 years.
Okay. I know that you did a really cool project that I've actually seen and loved, with Selena Gomez. I don't know when that came out. I saw it
the
like probably 6
documentary.
months ago. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So tell me, like, what does it look like to be a producer and a host? How did you get started doing that work? And then how did you end up in LA and doing projects like the documentary with Selena?
Yeah, so my path was really unconventional. I grew up between Chicago and England. My dad is British, so I went to all of elementary school in England. Then Chicago was 12 to 18, and then I was born in the US. And when I was 18, I was in my first semester of college in Chicago, and I went through a breakup. And during that time, my family was moving here to LA, and I was so sad about this breakup. So they were like, "Well, do you want to move with us, or do you want to stay?" I wasn't really loving my school, so I thought, you know what, I'll move. And there was a woman at my church who was a news anchor for Fox News in Chicago, and I said, "Can I come and work for you for 6 months?" I thought I wanted to be a journalist at the time, so I was like, "Let me just work for her and see if I want to continue on that path when I get to LA." And I absolutely loved it. It was amazing. Every day we were covering different stories. We were going all over the city of Chicago, just seeing so many things, and I loved the adrenaline of it. I loved the people part of it. And so I was like, okay, that's my path. She really encouraged me to move to LA as well. And I'm like, I'm going to continue to do that. So I moved to LA and I took community college courses, and then I was going to transfer to USC, continue on the journalism path. Now, during that time, so imagine I'm like 19 when I get to LA, the whole news business was changing, right? Because, and it's still, you still can go that traditional path, right? Where you get the 4 year degree and then you move to a smaller market, eventually work your way up by, 40, you have a job at a big network, hopefully, right? But it was changing where, you could start a YouTube channel, or you could put yourself out there on Instagram, and then people get hired for ratings, or they're hiring, it just, the whole business was changing. And so I was continuing to take my courses, and then I was also working at an art showroom. I honestly worked a million jobs in my like late teens and early 20s just to kind of figure out where exactly my place was. And I spent a lot of time in prayers. So when I moved to LA, I did not know anybody outside of having family here. And it's an amazing city, but it's very lonely. And I think any city, when you're new, it's difficult to move, especially when you're, I think when you're younger and you're in grade school, it's a little easier to maybe meet people, but it's really tough as an adult. So I prayed. I was like, God, if this is where I'm meant to be, make it clear. I prayed that I would make the best friends I've made in my life, or I'm moving back to Chicago. And I put like a 1 year timeline on it, right? Because I think it's important to try things, but then you do have to give it some time. I can't say like, by next week I need to meet people. Like, you have to give things some time. And you know so I got involved in church and started meeting people. And then that Christmas, my parents knew a couple. We went to their house for Christmas. I made friends with their son. On Christmas Day, he at the time was living with a guy named Jason Kennedy, who was a host for E! News at the time. And he kind of included me in their friend group. They were starting a Bible study, and that's actually how I met Tanya, my co-author. And eventually, through a mutual friend that was a part of that Bible study, I met Selena. And so that was, now this New Year's Eve, it will be 11 years since we've been friends. So her and I became really close. I worked for her in like a number of different positions, but to kind of save time, basically, I worked a lot of different jobs. I worked freelance for doing like red carpet takeovers with Snapchat and Teen Vogue and all these different outlets. So I was kind of doing the journalism thing, but not in the way that I wanted to. It was a little bit too like, I don't know, it just felt too superficial the way that I was doing it. So through working for Selena, as I was an assistant for a while, through that role, I kind of learned the ropes of everything. And I realized that I wanted to give the rest of my life to working on projects that were going to make a difference and truly help people. Because what you learn through being in the entertainment industry long enough is that you're around people who have achieved the height of success. And unless you have a deep sense of purpose and you are living fully in that, then nothing means anything, right? And we live in a world that's so focused on the external, where it's like, well, if I just get this, right? If I just like, you know, make the most money possible, or I become famous or something, then somehow my life is going to mean something. And it's just not true. There's a lot of inner work that has to be done to find that inner purpose. So anyway, I figured that out, and then shifted into working for Selena project based, and then also working independently as a producer and a host. So, the way I was able to do that was I just built a lot of relationships over the years. And so I reached out to people. I wanted to host an interview series. So I started a series called Giving Back Generation, interviewing people on their life story and how they use their life to give back. The documentary was a long journey alongside Selena's team. We actually started recording for that in 2015. And then it came out last year. So documentaries
Oh
are a
my
very, very long
gosh.
process. So that was a on and off, a 7-year journey. So, and
That
then
is
her and
so
I,
good to that's so good to hear because I think that I don't know, I think that so often we feel like someone has an idea for something and they make it or they,
yeah,
like we hadn't heard of someone and then they made one thing and it was like it just blew up and it's like no 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 basically everything you see every person you see doing something that you would like to do they've been working on this thing for a long
you're
time.
so right. And I think a lot of people want overnight success now. They want something to just happen, but there's a journey to it. There's a process to it. And you're so right. And something else that we've worked on together that just kind of came about during COVID is we have a cooking show together, Selena and I, called Selena and Chef. And we've filmed now 5 seasons. So it was 4 seasons on HBO Max, now known as Max. And then our 5th season will be on Food Network coming out later this year. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
fun.
That's so cool. Are
Thanks.
you like are you a good cook? Is it
Well,
or is it like
that's the
you guys
funny
are
part
learning
of
from
the
someone
show.
else?
We're learning from the top chefs all over the world. So
Okay.
that's
Okay.
the funny part of the show is that we are not chefs. So I'm helping Selena cook, and neither her or I are chefs. Although now we've done about 50 episodes, so now we are definitely much better. But it's been hilarious.
That is
And it
okay.
makes
I don't know
people
how
laugh. So it's like, I
yeah.
think food, and again, to talk about like the times we're living in it, I think food is the great connector. Food makes people so happy. The show's funny. It makes people laugh. So I think it's something that's out there that's just like good, wholesome TV.
Oh my gosh. Okay, seriously, I feel like I have to pause for a second because Raquel, I feel like we are cut from the same cloth. First of all, my degree is in broadcast news. And
What?
so as you're talking, yes. So as you're talking, and like I was dead set on the journalism path. And so as you're talking about like moving to the middle of nowhere, and by the
Yeah.
time you like reach 40, hopefully you've made it to a place where you actually
Yeah.
want to be. I'm like, I was ready for that path. And really, the reason I got off of it was because I met Jesus. I became a Christian, and I was like, "Ooh, I didn't want to be telling stories as much as I wanted to be like part of them." And
Wow.
there just was a big shift. It was right around the earthquake that happened in Haiti in 2010 was just super. I think it was 2010, might have been 2009, but it was just super impactful for me. And I'm like, I want to be on the ground helping people. Or I want to be part of the
Yeah.
story. And so I ended up doing a like humanitarian trip that next year. So I wasn't in Haiti, but also like I didn't have any skills that were going to help anyone in Haiti. So I definitely should not have been there. But I did
Well,
a humanitarian trip that led to a blog, that led to podcasts, that led to all of this stuff. But it's so
so
cool because it's
that's
like my degree, like all the way wrapped around in the same way, like same as you.
and you're doing it. You are doing journalism. You're interviewing. You have your blog. So it's like I feel the same way. It just took a different shape, but the heart is still
Yes.
the same, and you're doing it, and that's so cool.
It's I also am a very dedicated foodie who's a really bad cook. So
Okay,
I
so you and I
really
we're kindred souls. I'm gonna be in Nashville soon, so
yes.
I'll message you when I'm there, and we can have a little in person meetup.
We'll have to go try some food. We'll have to go,
Yes,
yeah, we'll
exactly.
have to
We'll go
go
out to
like
eat.
pick a
We won't cook.
restaurant.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Yes, even though you're probably really great. Um okay, so tell me I love hearing your career story. One of the things that we're going to be talking about more on the show is just how we make big decisions about our lives and so many of the things that you just shared are such big components to it of like I love how you said I'm going to give LA a year. And
Mhm.
like I'm going to pray a really big prayer over this time, but I'm going to give it some time. Like I'm not going to
Yeah.
say, I need my best friend dropped in my lap in a week. And so that's just a really good strategy. I'm really glad you shared that.
Thank you. And something else that might be helpful too, as well, because it can be really confusing to find your path. It took me, honestly, it was actually like 10 years of all of my 20s. I'm 31 now. I turned 32 next year. But I would say all of my 20s were spent trying a lot of different things, keeping integrity, building trust with people. And honestly, in a 2 year span of time, it was like I turned 30 and literally all the pieces came together of like a lot of stuff that I had been pushing for, trying for, but also living surrendered, not like not enjoying my life because things hadn't happened yet, but it was 10 years of groundwork, and the last 2 years everything has really taken off. So, I think advice that I would give is that you have to live surrendered, and then you have to say yes to yes to things and take the next right step, and know that even if it doesn't work out, it is redirecting you into what is meant to be, and it's also shaping your character to be able to handle success when you get there. And what I've learned and I've seen is that you can have someone so talented, but if something happens instantly, they lose it, because the character that is developed in the process of getting to where you're meant to be is what sustains you. And I know that I heard people saying that growing up, and I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. It doesn't make sense until you're living it, but I hope that I can communicate clear enough that like that truly was my path. And I'm still so young. I'm 31, and it was a lot of years of groundwork, and now I've found my groove. And then challenges come with that, right? Because the more you have, the more you've achieved, the more responsibility you have, the less time you have, so it's like actually everything it's just new levels of responsibility.
Mhm. I love everything about that. I feel like I've been living that a little bit too. I've been doing this work for like probably 12 years total if you really start from the beginning. But
Yeah.
then, I mean, longer if you go back to, getting my degree. But it just, nothing happens fast, or nothing has happened fast for me. And every moment along the way, it's like I know so much more now than I did 5 years ago. And so I'm able to do so much more now. And the only way to get from there to here was just a lot of hard work and a lot of Googling and a lot
Yeah.
of making mistakes. And it really is, but it all does build up. It does add up. And
Yeah.
even when it doesn't feel like you're making progress, you are.
Absolutely.
I want to talk to you about, I spent a little bit of time in LA. I haven't spent a ton of time, but from what I know, it's a hard place to, like, I feel like if comparison has like a home base, like maybe LA would be it. Is that a false perception, or is that like,
No, it absolutely is an accurate perception, because obviously entertainment industry exists around the world, but LA is the hub of the entertainment industry. And the entertainment industry, a lot of it is very superficial, right? So when things are superficial, you are naturally falling into comparison, right? Because you have some of the most beautiful people in the world by societal standards. You have endless access to, a lot of people, they'll look at a picture of someone and they'll be like, oh, I just want to look like that. And they don't know how much time and energy and money people have spent on looking a certain way. Or you have people that have achieved the top of the top, so you see them living a certain lifestyle. I Yeah, it can be very easy to fall into comparison, and that's why having a strong inner life and really really like seeing yourself as God sees you, it helps you to show up full and to know that no one else is you. So it doesn't matter. You could have someone in the exact, like for a film or something, going for the exact same role as you, the exact same job. No one is you. No one can bring what you can bring. So if something happens for you, it's because that was God's plan for it to happen to you. And if it doesn't, it was because it was for that other person to get that role. And you have to get to a place where you can celebrate them in that, where you can and actually I find the less that we compare and the more we cheer other people on, the more your life grows, the more it expands, the more that you are actually like getting rid of that getting rid of that feeling of comparison by celebrating people.
yeah. I love that. If someone's sitting here going, because I know that comparison hits all of us at different times. And so I want to kind of talk about different stages of it. Like if we're in a place where we haven't necessarily built up this strong inner life, we don't really like feel like we have a great sense on who we are and what value we bring to the table. Like talk to us about how you've been able to find that in your life, that like strong center.
Yeah. Well, I think that you have to acknowledge when the feelings come. And I think when those uncomfortable feelings come of like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not this enough, pretty enough, that enough, I don't have what that person has. I think that you have to acknowledge that feeling, right? And I think so often people numb. You feel that you don't want to feel it. So it's like, let me just make that feeling go away. So I don't want to sit in it. I'm just going to call a friend, or I'm going to do whatever you do to numb something. So I think it's accepting it. And then I think what's worked for me is prayer and worship. So I go on a lot of walks or a lot of long drives, like I talked in the beginning, and I'll just
Mhm.
have those conversations, God, where I'm like, I'm feeling this way. Help me to see myself the way that you see me, and kind of allowing like that presence to heal and to come in. And I always feel a sense of peace after. Sometimes you need to talk with a friend. I have a like one of my closest friends, Ashley Cook, like I'll call her and we can really talk things out, and I think that that's helpful. But like being selective with, who you share those hard things with, I think that's helpful as well. So yeah, I think that there are a number of different things that people can do, but I think acknowledgement is key. I think prayer and worship is key. I think also sometimes you have to, our minds are so powerful, and what are the thoughts that we're telling ourselves? What are the thoughts that we're thinking? So it's really important, if they're not good, to replace them with positive ones and replace them with the truth. And if you can't even find that for yourself, then maybe ask a friend or someone you love to tell you the things that they see in you, and then you can take that in if you can't do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I feel like those things have been just so big for me also. And I like specifically how you said calling a friend, because I think that, yeah, sometimes we get so caught up and so like twisted up in our own minds that and we do it by ourselves. Like when we're
Yeah.
feeling small, we get small. And so we get quiet and we don't tell people what's happening inside of our heads. And so then we have to try to fight it by ourselves. But it's like it's big, it's hard to fight, and I feel like almost our resources are compromised,
Yeah.
The thing that the place where we're lost is what is supposed to be the thing that gets us unlost,
Yeah.
and that's really it's really hard, like, our brains are busy, and so
Yeah.
calling in a friend and having, one person or a couple of people who really know you, who you can be really honest with about what's happening inside your mind. I feel like they're having an outside person to be like, okay, let me find you in there.
Yeah.
Like I see the ugliness because you let me see it, which is so important. And like now that I'm in there with you, let me like pull you out.
Yeah. I think you're so right. Community is huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like we talk about this so much, but it's because it's so real in our lives. But social media has added this whole new level of comparison and ability to look at other people's lives. How do you like have there been any things that you've found that have been helpful to keep you from like comparing your life to someone else's on social media?
Yeah, I think social media is a tough one because, and I like to always remind other people and myself too, that you are seeing a tiny glimpse of somebody's life. And if I can say it just from a perspective of being around a lot of people who people look up to, who they follow, who they think they have the most perfect life, no one, it's just not true. Nobody in this life is exempt from pain and from hardships, and it looks different for different people, but everybody experiences pain. So I think it's knowing that when you're scrolling and you're seeing things, you're seeing a small glimpse of whatever someone is choosing to share with the world. And so I think that's an important reminder. And then I think it's different for everyone. I think that if it is affecting you in a negative way, then it's important to take some space from it, or to be selective also with who you're following. It's like following people that friends that make you feel uplifted, that are sharing great things. I think that's important. And I think it's specific to each person. But again, I think the comparison thing comes back to seeing the beauty in your own life and you, knowing that no one is you. No one could ever be you, even if they wanted to. Who you are is amazing. And you were created on this earth at this time for a reason, for a purpose, and you were not meant to be anybody else. And no one's exempt from pain. So there's no one's life that you're seeing where they're, like maybe whatever your perception is of them, they're going through stuff too. And it's important to recognize and remember.
I love that's so helpful. Talk to me about well, let me tell you where this question comes from, and then I'd love to hear any insight you have into this. But I've had every once in a while for social media or for my website or for a book coming out or something like that, I do like a photo shoot. And I don't do them honestly as often as I should. So I feel like my photos are kind of old because it's stressful though.
Same.
But when I do it, I know how much time I spend getting everything exactly right. I know how we picked the backgrounds. I know how many
Yeah.
outfit changes I did. I know how what awkward position I was in to get that photo exactly right. I know how I feel getting the photos back. I just know how much goes into this, and I do it occasionally. And so when I see photos on social media, it's easier for me to imagine what the behind the scenes looked like to get that image, and therefore I'm less likely to be like, oh, she really is just at coffee and just took a really cute snapshot. But even still, even though I know the behind the scenes, I still can be like, oh, well, that's what she's at coffee right now. Even though
Yeah.
I know she probably scheduled that post a month ago, And so I just want to know, are there any, for you being in the entertainment industry, can you give me any other examples that can kind of you see this photo, but what's actually happening is this, or any funny stories or anything like that, just to poke some holes in it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I had the most amazing trip. This was part of our process filming for the documentary. We had a wonderful trip to Kenya, where we just got to meet so many special people. And like anyone knows, when you're traveling overseas, sometimes, there's certain precautions that you have to take. And I on this trip to Kenya, we had to take anti-malaria pills so that we didn't get sick. And I had a reaction to one of the pills. So we landed in customs, and I fainted in the airport. We're literally at customs, and I fainted, and I felt so sick and whatever. I get there, and then later, I was fine the whole week on the trip. The last day, I got a crazy bacterial infection. I was extremely, extremely ill. So now people would look at my pictures from that trip, which I posted on my Instagram, pictures from that trip, and it was wonderful and it was amazing. But something that I didn't share was that I fainted in the airport. I fell flat on my head. I, I, well, actually, luckily, someone did catch me then. But still, it was scary, and I got severely, severely ill. So that's an example of something where people just saw pictures, but that was something else that happened that was behind the scenes of the photos. Um, so yeah, I mean, I could give you so many examples, but I think there's always something behind any picture. The documentary, right? That was a 7-year journey of a lot of things that we shared 90 minutes of footage. There was a lot that went into that. A lot of years of friendship, a lot of years of so many things. So I think that yeah, that's one example for you.
Well, I'm so sorry about that.
It was worth
But
it.
that's such a good example. I feel like every photo, there's something behind it. Just like we talked about earlier with every success, there are years behind it. And that's true for everybody. And for every high point you see in people's lives, there's also low points and there are struggles. And I feel like the more we can imagine that when we see a person, there are all the quotes about every person you meet is fighting an unseen
Yeah.
battle or something like that. But it really is if we can, look at someone whenever we find ourselves kind of comparing our life to someone, being like, the stuff that they're going through may be harder than what I'm going through. I just can't, like, they just didn't take a picture of it, you know?
It's so true. And I've always said too, also that the truth about life, right? We live in a broken world. So there's always going to be someone that has it better. There's always going to be someone that has it worse. The key to living, uh, I think, a peaceful, content life. I don't want to even use the word happy because I think happiness, it comes and goes, and it's, I think a content and peaceful life is to be grateful for what you have and know that your life was meant specifically for you. But that doesn't mean that, you know, that we're any more deserving of anything good that happens to us than anyone else. There's so much in this life that actually does not make sense, and will never make sense, until eternity. So that's, I think, an important thing to remember as well, to just be really present in the moment, be really grateful, see everything as a gift, knowing that, there really is, yeah, there's a lot that just does not make sense.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mhm.
there is. Talk to us about, I want to go a little bit deeper into like seeing ourselves the way that God sees us. Because I know
Mhm.
and seeking validation from him. I know that you talked about like prayer and worship. How do we like, or I guess, what are some things that you have done or experienced to be able to like figure out who God says you are so that you can hold on to that? Like, because I know that there are a lot of women listening who are like, I'd love to be really rooted in that. I don't know how to get there. I don't know
Yeah.
what God thinks about
Well,
me.
it's been a journey for me, and I think everybody has different things that they struggle with. And so one for me that's been, I don't know, just been something that I've struggled on and off with has been in regard to appearance. So I felt very confident in like my in personality and whatever, and made friends easily. But that's been something that's been a struggle for me specifically with dating. And I think there's a number of reasons for why that was. It's interesting. It's like people can just say little things literally in like junior high, or you could be so young, and or high school or whatever, grade school, and it really sticks with you and it shapes you. And I think that's another reminder of like we have to be so careful with our words because it takes a lot of time to undo that. And so it's something that I've grown in so much. I have come to, I think, a healthy place with it, but there still are moments where I have doubts that way. If I'm on a date or I'm talking to someone, it's like, oh, well, I don't feel like pretty enough, or I could change this. And I know that that's not true, but that's something that I've struggled with, right? So I think that it's continuing to replace those thoughts. And I'll tell myself, like, we're not going there. We're not doing that. That is not true. You are enough exactly the way that you are. And so I think that what helps with prayer and worship, and if someone doesn't know how to do that or access that, you can just put on a song even, and just, you don't even have to say anything. You can just kind of be in that space and think whatever you're thinking. And then I think eventually it's getting to a space where you're just like, God, heal this in me. I don't want to feel this. It can literally be that simple. And then knowing too, part of it is who you surround yourself with, and the right people pull out the beauty in you. And, and, they do. And I think that, yeah, I think that's a big part too.
That is like the way that you explain that is so simple, and I appreciate that so deeply because I think
Mm.
we just I don't know, I think we choose like really fancy confusing word, like we put a lot of scaffolding around something that really is like talking and listening and being quiet, and I just that's a place I'm really in right now, is like, how do we just talk about this in like really simple, regular people words, because I just
Yeah.
feel like it's so much more powerful that way. And the idea of friends bringing out beauty in you is like, I'm so with you. I spent most of my life under the weight or like kind of tied up by things that people said about me in middle school,
Yeah.
And it's like, it's just that's a time when when we're growing up is a time when people are like particularly careless with their words or like cruel with their words because we're just all trying
Yeah.
to figure it out and we don't know better. But
And
also
think
it's a
about,
time
we
when we're
didn't even
really
have TikTok or Instagram or any of these things then. Can you imagine now?
I know. No.
I know.
No.
Mm.
Like we didn't have MySpace. I did not have
No,
MySpace. Like that
no.
was
MySpace was
none
like
of
high
it.
school. Yeah.
Same. Yes.
Yeah.
So it's like it's a really particular time when we're really forming a lot of our identity and like we're kind of we're like spongy to the words that people say about us and it's like particularly brutal for that reason. Um so I think in the years since I've started to be much more particular with who I surround myself with, knowing that I don't want to be around people that either intentionally or unintentionally make me feel small. And
Yeah.
then also, I do want to be around people who celebrate beauty both in themselves and in me and in other people. Because there are people like that just feel like they're almost like a fence around you. Like you can just grow into whatever you want to be and they're there cheering you on. And
Oh, that's a
friends like
great
that are such
picture, a
a
fence
joy.
around you. I love that
Yeah, like
idea of a fence
it's
around you. That's so
like when
cool.
there's a little like a sapling or something, they have just like a little baby tree on the side of the road or something, and they put a little fence around it so that it can grow and it doesn't get bumped. But yeah, I just when you said friends that like bring the beauty out of you, it's like we can do that for each other and we should. And if there are people in your life who make you feel small, like those don't have to be the people that you listen to. They just don't.
No, exactly.
Talk to me about anxiety and stress, because I think that that's another thing that so many of us are carrying right now. And I know you talk about that in your book. So I'd love to hear just like any insights or takeaways that you can share with us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a difficult one. Because it really does, it's always existed. I think the times that we are in are so there's a lot of anxiety and there's a lot of stress again around the world and our day-to-day lives. And again, I think it comes back to, you have to be careful about what you're taking in from people in your life. You know what I mean? And when it is too much, you need to know when it's time to take space, and you have to listen to your body. Our bodies are actually great indicators as to what's going on and who's right for us, who's not. Even with, and it doesn't mean you can just check out. Relationships take work. Work is work, right? There's always going to be a certain level of stress and people skills that you have to use, but your body is speaking to you all the time. So when you get that pit in your stomach, if that's consistently happening with certain situations, you need to be able to remove, remove certain things or take space from certain people or things. And so the way that I deal with it is I've tried more over time to pay attention to my body and how I'm feeling and when I need space. And then I go back to what I've been saying. I feel like I sound repetitive, but the prayer and worship thing of just like knowing when I need that alone time and just kind of like fill myself up.
It's amazing how hard it is to listen to your body. Like
Hmm.
why that should be a really easy thing. It should be really easy to feel something and know what it means and respond, but it's it's not that easy.
Yeah. No, it's not. You're right. So I think you're totally right. It's like getting to the root of it. It's like, so that anxious feeling, the way that I describe it when it comes, it's like I don't know. For me, I like kind of like tense up a little bit, or I feel it in my stomach, or I even feel a weird adrenaline where I'm like, I just don't know what to do. You feel restless is the word.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, okay, why am I feeling this way? What's the root of it? And oftentimes there's fear behind it. So what's the fear behind this? And is that real, or is that my thoughts projecting? And if it's real, then you can deal with it. Maybe it's a conversation you need to have with someone saying, hey, I'm feeling this way. Are these feelings accurate? How can we get through this? And if it's not, then it's just surrendering it. This hasn't happened. I like that saying. Someone said once, like, fear is false evidence appearing real. And I think a root of a lot of anxiety is fear. And it's, yeah.
That's I don't even know if I've heard that quote. I was thinking of the idea that like if, or I don't know if it's fear, anxiety isn't like it's basically just emptying today of joy. It's not actually doing any like producing anything. Someone's gonna look this up and be like, it was this stuff. Because I know I know I have that wrong. But like it's you're rehearsing bad things that you think are gonna happen. And it to imagine losing someone you love or getting rejected or something like that, imagining it over and over in your head and fearing it doesn't actually make it better when it happens. It just ruins the moment that you're actually in. And that's
Yeah.
something like I feel like I was reminding myself of that yesterday.
Yeah. It's so true.
Talk to me, just kind of as we're finishing up, talk to me a little bit about joy. I love that your book is all about joy and about, I don't know, I love sunshine is such a like important word for me. I love that word. And so what are some ways that we even and maybe especially in moments in life and history that feel so dark, like talk to us about some ways that you've found to find some sunshine.
Well, I love that scripture that says, the joy of the Lord is my strength. And I think that that if we have joy in our heart and we have an abundance of it, it's to be shared. And I think that joy and sunshine can look like so many different things. It can be calling a friend and checking in. It can be even just having a fun night. I had a dinner the other night with a group of girls, and we were just, everybody was connecting and chatting, and everyone texted after just being like, tonight was so great. It was so fun. It wasn't anything extraordinary. It was like we had a meal and we had a fun night together, sat by the fire pit till late. I think that that joy is a way that we can show up to situations, and it can even have the power to change a room. You could walk into a space, into work, into something, and it's a negative atmosphere, and you show up kind and loving, and even in the midst of hard times, and that is contagious, and people need that. And so if you have an abundance of it to give, share it. And I think it can look a million different ways.
I think by sharing it too, it like multiplies, you
It
know?
does. And I think it's smiling. It's like doing just a little, it's your presence. It's what you're bringing to the table. And sometimes too, even if I'm in a bad mood or I'm upset about something, I have to tell myself, like, cut it out. We're not doing that, like leave that in the car.
I love the way that you talk to yourself. Like, I
Yeah,
feel like I do this. I feel like I do the same thing. It's so like, hey,
Yeah.
listen, we're not going to do this. We're not going to go there. And it's like, it's
No.
kind, but it's firm, like
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
Raquelle, do you have any like just last encouragement to share with our listeners? Just anything that comes to mind. I'd love to hear it.
Oh, well, my encouragement would be anyone that's listening to your podcast is someone that obviously cares to build a life that is full of the things that we've been talking about, hope and joy and community. And so I would just encourage them that, like, keep doing what you're doing, keep listening to stuff like this. See yourself as the beautiful, amazing individual that you are. And like, yes, we are in very difficult, hard times in the world, but we are also alive and here on earth at this time for a reason and for a purpose. And it's no accident. And so you are meant to show up in your day to day life filled up with the love of God so that you can go out and share that with others and be a good friend and show up to your work well. Take the next right step. If you don't even know what that is, sometimes just say, like, yes to anything that feels somewhat, peaceful to you, and it will redirect you into where you're meant to be going. And just keep going. Don't give up. And you'll look back one day and you'll be like, wow, it all made sense. It all weaved together. All the dots connect. And yeah.
I love that. You are sunshine. I'm so glad that I got to meet you, and thank you so much for making the time to be on the show.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.